Ukraine just pulled off something remarkable. For the first time during its fight against Russia, Ukraine has taken out a pair of Su-30s. That doesn't seem so strange. Ukraine has destroyed plenty of Russian aircraft before. But what makes this most recent feat so amazing is that Ukraine managed to take out the pair of Russian warplanes with missiles shot from its drone boats. This is a game changer. As two Russian Su-30s lie obliterated in the Black Sea waters, Russian President Vladimir Putin is being forced to face a future where his tactics, both for the Black Sea and his use of annexed Crimea, lie in tatters. On May 3rd, the War Zone, or TWZ, was among the first to report on Ukraine's remarkable drone boat achievement. It shared information from the country's Defense Intelligence Directorate, or GUR, stating that Ukraine had used a pair of AIM-9M Sidewinder missiles fired from its Magura 7 drone boats to shoot down a pair of Su-30 flanker aircraft. Not only did this mark the first time that Ukraine had managed to destroy this particular type of aircraft using one of its drone boats, but it also heralded the first confirmed kill by those boats using the AIM-9. Lieutenant General Kirilo Budanov called the attack a historical moment, while denying earlier claims that Ukraine achieved the feat using R-73 short-range air-to-air missiles. If any more proof were needed, video of the first Su-30 being taken down was also shared by the GUR to social media. The 38 seconds of footage shows one of the Russian Su-30s in the crosshairs of a Magura 7. Within 8 seconds, an explosion is seen in the skies as something, now known to be an AIM-9, obliterates the Russian craft while it's in flight. The jet is then seen disintegrating into multiple pieces, all of which streak down to the Black Sea. Remarkably, the crew of the first Su-30 survived. They were later picked up by civilian vessels in the Black Sea. Those manning the second Su-30 weren't so lucky, as they were reportedly obliterated along with their aircraft by Ukraine's clever use of its drone boats and US-made missiles. Make no mistake, this is massive for Ukraine. By using drone boats to decimate a pair of Su-30s, Ukraine has just sent a clear message to Putin that his grip on the Black Sea is slipping. Russia's leader already knew that. He's been forced to watch as Ukraine used drone boats and missiles to make the previously dreaded Black Sea fleet a non-factor in those waters. Now he's dealing with the prospect of no longer being able to send aircraft from Crimea into Ukraine, as those craft now risk being shot down by cheap and efficient drones before they ever make it to their targets. So how did Ukraine manage to pull off this remarkable Black Sea attack? The basic answer is already clear. It used Magura 7 drones and AIM-9 missiles. But it's important to dig deeper to understand why that combination creates something Putin has reason to fear going forward. The starting point is the Magura 7. There isn't a huge amount known about this seaborne drone, with even Budanov being cagey with the details in the wake of Ukraine's Black Sea attack. All he'd tell TWZ is that the Magura 7 is a variant of the Magura 5 that's been tweaked to make it an air defense drone. More information comes from other resources. On May 4th, Naval News published the first confirmed images of the Magura 7, which gives some ideas about the types of tweaks Ukraine has made to its already dangerous unmanned surface drone, or USV. The outlet reports that the Magura 7 is fairly different from the USVs Ukraine has previously used to carry Sea Dragon missiles, which themselves were adapted aerial missiles that Ukraine can now fire from sea. The Magura 7 has a wider hull than previous versions of the USV, along with large fixed rails. The USV is believed to be around 26 feet long, which is 8 feet longer than the Magura 5. Naval News speculates that the Magura 7 can be seen as the maturation of the Magura 5, which it says served something of a prototype purpose for Ukraine. In the Magura 7, there's a USV that has similar lines to the Magura 5, only it has a reshaped bow that makes it useful both for surviving at sea and carrying out assaults during the dead of winter. There are also several antennae and sensors seen on the Magura 7 that weren't on its previous variants, which are likely used to enable communication between the drone and its operators. One thing that is known is that Ukraine can't use the Magura 7 as a kamikaze drone, yet. There are no explosive charges seen in the USV's bow, according to Naval News. The USV also lacks impact detonators, meaning that Ukraine likely doesn't want to have any possibility of sacrificing these powerful drones. However, it's also possible that these features may be configurable, suggesting that there may soon be a future where Ukraine starts using Magura 7s to ram into the few ships Putin dares to send into the Black Sea. Beyond these details pulled from photographs, there's not much else known about the Magura 7. However, there are Magura 5 specifications that may somewhat indicate the USV's capabilities beyond the visual design tweaks. The Magura 5 has an operating range of up to 248 miles, meaning its operators can send it deep into the Black Sea without worrying about losing communications or the ability to control the firepower the drone packs. As for the USV itself, it can sail for up to 497 miles before it needs to refuel and has a cruising speed of 25.5 miles per hour. That rockets up to 48.5 miles per hour when the Magura 5 is pushed to its maximum capabilities, allowing the drone to make a quick escape if it comes under fire. The Magura 5 is also capable of sending 3 high-definition video streams back to its operations and is navigated by a combination of inertial and visual controls. It's also believed to cost around $240,000 to build each Magura 5. How many of these specifications carry over to the Magura 7 isn't clear. The tweaked version of the USV, being larger while being equipped with rails, suggests that it has a lower range and speed, but even that isn't confirmed. It's just as possible that Ukraine's brilliant weapons designers have come up with ways to maintain everything that the Magura 5 offers, while making the Magura 7 a terrible aerial threat for Russia's forces to handle. Which leads to the second component that allowed Ukraine to pull off this remarkable first-time shooting down of Su-30s using its drone boats, the AIM-9M Sidewinder, specifically the AIM-9M. According to Budanov, the GUR began installing AIM-9s into its drone boats in January of this year. Again, the Ukrainian military head wouldn't provide many more details beyond that. He said, "We use a couple of models of missiles on our Magura 7, but the best results come from the AIM-9. Budanov wouldn't tell TWZ if Ukraine had attempted to use AIM-9s to take out Russian aircraft from its drone boats before, or if this first success against the Su-30s also marked the first time Ukraine even made an attempt. But hold on a second. Ukraine's use of AIM-9s in this context doesn't make any sense given what's already known about these missiles. The US Air Force describes the AIM-9 as a heat-seeking supersonic air-to-air missile that is carried by fighter aircraft. Again, that's an air-to-air missile carried by aircraft. The missile has no business being loaded into a USV, never mind being successfully launched from that USV to take out aerial targets. Yet, that's exactly what happened. The AIM-9M variant that Ukraine used is also one of the most recent versions of the missile. It retains all of the tweaks made to the AIM-9L, including a more powerful rocket motor and superior tracking maneuverability compared to the original AIM-9, and adds a set of new defenses against an enemy's infrared countermeasures. Combine that with a tweaked rocket motor that produces less smoke, making the missile more difficult to track, and the result is a weapon capable of streaking through the skies to take out an aircraft long before that craft can even see it coming. More details come from the War Thunder wiki. It says that the AIM-9M weighs 185 pounds, with around 10 pounds of that coming from the warhead used to shred through aerial targets. Each missile uses infrared for guidance, which is why the infrared countermeasures introduced to the AIM-9M are so important, and has a lock range of about 6.8 miles. If the missile has time to reach its top speed, it can hit Mach 2.5. That's more than enough to take out a Su-30 moving at close to its top speed. Never mind aircraft that were likely cruising over the Black Sea because their pilots believe they face no threat. Therein lies the key to Ukraine's success. Russia's Su-30 pilots never expected to face AIM-9s when flying over the Black Sea. For that to happen, Ukraine would have needed to send one of its own fighter jets, likely its Western-provided F-16s, to the body of water. That would have been a huge risk. Ukraine is using its F-16s primarily as defensive units, while it waits the arrival of more, making direct engagements with Russian jets an unlikely approach. Putin's pilots had a false sense of confidence. Ukraine made them pay by using USVs that appeared to present no threat to fire missiles that should never come from the sea to take the Russian Su-30s down. This most recent Ukrainian victory shows Putin that, even more than 3 years into his attritional campaign, Ukraine is just as capable of innovating with the Western-provided weapons it's receiving as it's ever been. And Russia's leader has something else to worry about as well. As mentioned earlier, some of the first reports of the Su-30s being down speculated that Ukraine was using R-73s fired from its Magura 7s. That's now known to be false. And that's another problem for Putin. As TWC reports, the R-73 and AIM-9M have similar dimensions and offer about the same amount of stopping power. However, there's one big difference: the infrared countermeasures present in the AIM-9M. The R-73 doesn't have those countermeasures and also doesn't include the improvements that made the previous AIM-9L variant such a stronger missile. The R-73 might be a missile that Russia's pilots could handle when being fired from sea. The AIM-9M, not so much. Only two potential issues are holding Ukraine back from using more AIM-9Ms as surface-to-air missiles in the future. The first is that it's not clear how many of these powerful missiles Ukraine has in its stockpiles. There are thousands of AIM-9s in different configurations floating around. The US has produced over 110,000 of them since the missile was introduced in 1956, though how many of these are AIM-9Ms and how many of those have gone to Ukraine hasn't been determined. These stockpile challenges might not be so much of a problem if it wasn't for a feature that the AIM-9M lacks: high off-bore sight or HOBS capabilities. That's something the R-73 brings to the table, and it's a feature that improves a missile's ability to hit its target. With HOBS, a missile seeker can slave a significant distance off its centerline axis and still lock onto and engage a target when fired at extreme angles. The AIM-9M can't do that. Launchers installed on Ukraine's Magura 7s would have to be articulated to allow for a similar capability. They don't appear to be, so Ukraine has to point its AIM-9Ms almost directly at their targets to get said threats into the missile seeker view before the AIM-9M can be fired. That view is narrow, creating the possibility of launches that don't take down a target. The counterpoint is that Russia's aircraft never expected to be hit by an AIM-9M fired by a USV in the first place. Ukraine has just shown that it's capable of pulling off the feat. Now, Russia's pilots have to be aware of potential threats in the water. If they're not, Ukraine could take more of them out. Even if they are, that awareness could offer Ukraine the ability to control the flight paths of Russia's jets with its USVs, potentially leading them into other attacks. But right now, none of that matters. Two Su-30s are in pieces because Ukraine figured out how to fire AIM-9s from Magura 7 USVs in a move that Putin never saw coming. But perhaps he should have. After all, though taking out Su-30s with drone boats is a first for Ukraine, destroying Russian aircraft with its USVs isn't. Back in December, Ukraine claimed that it managed to take out an Mi-8 helicopter using an R-73 missile fired from one of its drone boats. Again, the incident took place over the Black Sea and was even accompanied by a video. As the footage demonstrates, one of Ukraine's drone boats was being peppered by aerial machine gun fire while it released its missiles. A Mi-8 that was attacking the boat let off several infrared flares in an effort to send the released R-73s off course. It was unsuccessful. The Ukrainian missiles found their target. What happened to the USV after that is almost irrelevant. Russia lost an expensive piece of aerial equipment, likely along with the pilots that kept it in the skies. Even if the USV was destroyed in the aftermath, Ukraine didn't lose any of its people in the engagement. This should have been a warning sign to Putin. But as has so often been the case during his invasion, Putin underestimated Ukraine. He was complacent. He believed that Ukraine taking down a helicopter wasn't a big deal. Putin might have had a point. Choppers move much slower than jets in the skies, making them easier targets. However, Russia's leader failed to account for what Ukraine launching an R-73 really meant. Ukraine was showing him that it could take out aerial targets with a missile that is similar in many respects to the AIM-9. It wouldn't be too much of a leap for Ukraine to adapt its USVs to fire that air-to-air missile and take out some Russian fighters. And that's what happened on May 3rd. There's also no hiding away from the incident for Putin. Typically, Russia tries to downplay successful Ukrainian strikes, often claiming that they're the result of debris created by Russia's defenses taking out Ukraine's missiles and drones. That couldn't have happened here. A destroyed AIM-9M would explode in midair far away from the Su-30s Russia just lost. Ukraine scored direct hits. There's no Russian misdirection that can distract from this fact. It also doesn't help Putin's case that several Russian military channels on the Telegram social media platform have already reported the Su-30 losses. One claims that Ukraine has fully seized the initiative in the Black Sea, noting that the enemy has an overwhelming advantage in the use of unmanned boats, USVs, with the ability to attack any part of the water area and keep the coast of the Russian Federation and the adjacent airspace under control. Ukraine shot down one of the Su-30s just 31 miles away from the coast. The Russian military blogger suggests the USV lured the Su-30 by presenting itself as a potential target before firing. Another problem emerges for Putin's forces. Drone boats that could previously be stopped from controlling the Black Sea can now fight back against Russia's aerial might, meaning every engagement in the future means Russia risks losing valuable equipment. All of which leads to a key question. What does Ukraine's Su-30 destruction mean for Russia? On the equipment value front, Putin's forces just lost a pair of very expensive pieces of military hardware. Su-30s aren't cheap. As the Kyiv Post pointed out in its report on the incident, each of these multi-role fighter jets cost Russia around $50 million to build. So that's $100 million of hardware Russia just lost, along with several pilots and the weapons loaded into its Su-30s. Given that Russia is on a slow path to running out of its financial reserves by the end of 2025, it simply can't afford to allow such expensive equipment to get blown out of the skies in just 24 hours. But it's happening, and Putin will be feeling the effects in the Russian budget. It's also hard to ignore what losing two Su-30s means to Russia from a tactical perspective. These are among the better fighter jets in Putin's increasingly aging air force. Crewed by two people, the jets can reach speeds of around 1,320 miles per hour, which is about Mach 2, and come loaded with munitions that cause serious damage. Along with a 30mm GSH-301 gun packed with 150 rounds, each Su-30 has 12 external stations that allow it to carry over 17,600 pounds of hardware. Those weapons range from devastating cab bombs to 250mm rockets and powerful air-to-air and air-to-surface missiles. It's unknown what the Su-30s Russia just lost were carrying, but it doesn't matter. Putin's troops just lost a pair of firepower delivery vehicles that could have allowed them to keep up the pressure on Ukraine in several theatres, be they the Black Sea or the east side of Ukraine, where Russia is trying to grab more territory. That'll force Russia to think twice about sending more aircraft over the Black Sea in the future. In the process, the new risk Ukraine has created means that it might be able to relieve pressure elsewhere. Putin can no longer rely on this multi-role fighters to fly over the Black Sea to unleash missiles and glide bombs at Ukrainian targets. Any that try could be shot down just like the two Su-30s Russia just lost. The knock-on effect could be that targets in Ukraine's south face fewer bomb and missile strikes, meaning Russia's forces have to try and break through fortifications on the ground using human wave assaults. More Russian soldiers will die. Russia may soon find itself struggling to keep up its attacks in Ukraine's east if more of these Black Sea attacks follow what Ukraine achieved in early May. And with regards to the Black Sea, that's another problem for Putin. Russia can't claim to control the waterway anymore, either on the surface or in the skies above. Prior to Ukraine's unexpected aerial assault, it had used USVs, along with missiles and aerial drones, to destroy or damage around a third of Russia's Black Sea fleet. At the time, everybody assumed Ukraine was launching these naval attacks to relieve pressure and prevent Putin from using the Black Sea to resupply troops in Ukraine's south. And it was. However, Ukraine has also emptied the Black Sea to the point where its USVs can operate almost however they want. Russia's Su-30 pilots discovered that fact to their peril a couple of days ago, and the odds are that this success will convince Ukraine that it's worthwhile to send more of its new Magura 7s into the waters. It all adds up to a terrible realization for Putin. The Black Sea is Russia's no more, and now even his pilots can no longer feel safe flying over the sea's waters. They'll never know when a Ukrainian AIM-9, R-73 or some other missile could be heading in their direction. But what do you think about what Ukraine just pulled off in the Black Sea? How impressive is it that Ukraine took out two Su-30s using missiles intended to be launched from aircraft in its drone boats? How might Russia respond to this new threat? Share your thoughts with us in the comments, and remember to subscribe to the Military Show for even more insights into the latest developments in the Ukraine war.